So that ability, I think, and this is where leadership is so important. You've got to be able to drive value, but you've got to unite it and bring your people with you and creating the environment for high performance, which is really your culture. That's so super important. People pay lip service to that, I think, who don't really understand the interconnectedness of delivering sustainable results.
Welcome to Future Fit Leadership, a podcast for emerging, experienced and executive leaders to build community, grow capability and future focus their career pathways. There has been a global shift in how we lead, and our conversations with leaders and executives explores the skills, strategies and mindsets that is needed to thrive in this ever-evolving landscape of the future. So whether you are a seasoned executive, an aspiring leader, or simply curious about the future of leadership, we are here to give you practical insights to unlock your potential, change the status quo, and break open our assumptions on how work works. Produced in partnership with Future Leadership, a capability ecosystem for boards and executives, Future Fit Leadership is your place for bite-sized learning for executives hungry to make a change. Hello and welcome to Future Fit Leadership. I hope wherever you are listening to this podcast, you are well. There are some people you meet whose energy you just don't hear, you feel it. And Kate Mason is absolutely one of these people. In this episode of Future Fit Leadership, I had the privilege of sitting down with a powerhouse who shaped the people, culture and transformation strategies of some of the world's biggest companies and is now using that experience to drive deep social impact through her own business, Social Value. Kate's career is anything but ordinary. We're talking 35 years of experience across Coca-Cola Amatil, Amcor, Credit Suisse, and more, leading massive businesses and digital transformations, mergers, acquisitions, and some of the toughest culture change programs you can imagine. She's sat at the big tables, C-suite tables, boardroom tables, and she's helped organizations not just weather change, but lead it. And yet she'll be the first to tell you she fell into HR by accident while on tour with Paul McCartney. And yes, there's a story there, and yes, we do get into it. But beyond the glitter and the titles, what struck me most was her mission. Through Social Value, Kate helps organizations shift from performative to purposeful, from strategy on paper to strategy in action. She works with leaders to build inclusive cultures, bridge capability gaps, and avoid the all too common trap of chasing profit at the cost of people. She's coaching women out of traditional functional roles into P&L positions and building CEO pipelines that look and lead differently. We talk about what it means to build pipelines that aren't just full of carbon copies, but genuinely diverse, value-driven leaders. And we unpack the real cost of leaders who don't create space in their diaries, their cultures, or their minds to focus on what truly matters. She doesn't hold back on culture, theatre, burnout, agility as a buzzword, and the dangers of clinging to the familiar just because it's comfortable. But she also brings heart. Kate has lived the cost of leadership. She's been a carer since childhood, lost someone she loved deeply for the sake of her career, and understands the toll of being always on. Her insight into burnout, energy management, and whole of life leadership are a must-hear for anyone in the game right now. So if you've ever wondered what it really takes to lead with heart and hold the line between purpose and performance, this is the episode for you. Please enjoy my conversation with the remarkable Kate Mason. Kate Mason, welcome to Future Fit Leadership. I have been waiting to have this conversation with you and very excited about it. How are you today?
Oh, Anna, it's lovely to meet you. I am so privileged to be on this amazing Future Fit podcast, and I am absolutely raring to go, and I'm in a good place.
Well, I've been reading your background and you have had the most amazing career. You've worked with the most incredible brands. Some of the things that you've done in your, 35 years of experience, not just in Australia, but globally, has just been incredible. But I want to start on your personal journey with you because you've really worked on, leading people and culture functions in the most complex organizations. What led you to that career path?
In many ways, I've had an accidental career, you could say, on one hand. On the other hand, you could sort of say, I've always let my work, not just what I do, but how I do it, speak for itself. And others in the right roles or maybe the right time have actually opened doors or suggested roles to me that I have taken. I got some really good career advice when I turned down an opportunity to go and tour with Paul McCartney at EMI Records, and I turned it down. And
No, why?
traveling, because I was going traveling for the next 6 months in my backpack with my backpack in my combi van in London. This is last century. And Don Zimmern, the president of international marketing worldwide, said to me, "Do you want to go and sleep on that?" And I went home and spoke to, the 15 people I was sharing a place with in London. And they sort of smacked me around, I think, and sort of said, "You absolutely flipping mad." And I went back, and this is very early, I was 23. And Don said to me, "Do you want the good news or the bad news?" And I said, "I want the good news." And he said, "I'm going to give you your second chance." And so I did ultimately go and spend 6 months on tour. I said, "What's the bad news?" He said, "Young lady, you have played your second chance card very early in your career." And I think that's always put me in the best stead for when you talk about an accidental career. I just always have then, when people have seen something in me or they've suggested I take on a role that my self-confidence or self-belief was certainly not seeing, I have actually thought of Don, and it's the best career advice, because then suddenly I go, "Oh gosh, I played my second chance card. This is not going to happen again." So I've dived straight in. And that's how I've started my career in the last 30 plus years since that moment, has pivoted in all sorts of different directions in, as you say, highly complex environments. And then the final thing I would say about my career is I've been a carer since the age of 6. I have a severely disabled sister. 3 things, and it's probably really important skills for today and tomorrow. I can get perspective very, very easily. I can know that any situation that you're in, and that's often really complex and high stakes, I know that this will pass, and I know that it's not the most important thing forever and ever.
I love that. I love the way you bring that personal perspective into the work life, because quite often all of us have things that happen to us in our personal life, and it teaches us lessons. I always say the universe teaches us lessons, don't we? And we do need to bring that into the workplace because it provides a greater perspective. I want to ask you though, what was touring with Paul McCartney like? We can't just let that one go. We have to talk about that.
It was one of the greatest moments. It was just terrific. It was when Linda McCartney was still alive. And so seeing there, I would say, first of all, the partnership, the love, the support, the care was, it was a great gift for someone at 23 when you could see a relationship really flourishing. And so that was a personal gift for me. I was a graduate with Arthur Anderson. I was used to wearing 2-piece navy suits or black suits. Yeah. And suddenly I'm like, meant to be cool in my Reeboks and my ripped jeans and my T-shirts, which I probably didn't look cool in, but I attempted to look cool. So that was very different. I was sort of hanging out with all different people that I'd never met. I grew up in Canberra. And so suddenly I'm with all these musicians and, other artists, and I'm like, wow, this is such an extraordinary thing. I probably didn't know how extraordinary it was at the time, because I was probably in a deep end, like, oh, what am I doing? And halfway through, when I'd been doing this work, someone came up to me and said, I thought I was just being the happiness officer. My brief was to go and just make sure Paul and Linda were happy, their team was happy, all the venue staff were happy, obviously the record company was happy, the promoters, the marketers, just make it, if you think about it, now we'd call it stakeholder relations.
Yes, yes.
That time it was just, or we would call it HR, but it was happiness. I was just like, make everyone happy, right? This is 1989, 1990.
We probably still should be calling it that,
And so someone came up to me halfway through and said, "Oh, we're looking for this Australian girl called Kate, your HR lady." And I said, "What?" So I like to say I fell into human resources, but I fell into it in the right way. How do you get everyone to work together to produce an outcome? And for me, when I think of people and culture roles that I went on to do, that's always also in the back of my head. You've got to create a strategy and a structure and a leadership team and a culture that actually works together to produce an outcome. And I think as I said, it was very early in my career, I've always instilled those values and those principles around the way in which I've obviously come up through a technical sort of pathway, to your point about my career, but equally as I broadened out more and I was on C-suite enterprise leadership roles, I still bring that both from my technical ability, but when you're leading, broader leading of organizational strategy as a senior executive.
Do you think in some instances HR misses the mark on how you've
Yeah.
described their job should be, their role is in the business?
100%. I think if you look at technical HR and sort of certainly over the last 20, 30 years, it was all about, they used to say attract, develop, retain people. And, you'd have all these attraction strategies, your recruitment and selection, and then you'd have sort of your training and development. And then you'd have your retention, which should be your leadership and your culture. But they're distinct sort of almost sort of building blocks, but it's actually the art of doing this really well is to be very commercial, understand the strategy, be part of setting that and understand the strategy and where you're trying to deliver value. And then make all components of a business work, utilizing any of the strengths and technical abilities within the people and culture function. Versus I often still see different silos of HR trying to have impact without it being consistently applied and also collectively applied in service of the strategy. So for people and culture, you have to have strong commercial acumen, as well as, I think, the passion and the belief and the real will about humanity and people, and then your skills is that technical ability. But I see a range of situations where you don't have all three. And then I see a range of situations where it works really, really well and you do have all three. And they're at the table and it works fantastically. They're a trusted partner and advisor. They're running the business, and it's exciting to see more people and culture professionals actually now cracking into moving from sort of that people and culture role into running divisions
into C-suite
and being CEOs, right? And that's one of the things I specialize in now is coaching functional, especially women, from functional roles into P&L roles, so you can get better diverse CEO pipelines.
So the question then is, what made you step away from a very successful career into launching your own business, Social Value, and then tell us what Social Value does?
Thank you. I was getting to the stage after 35 years. They're C-suite roles. I've been in C-suite roles for nearly 20 years. They're exhausting. You've got to be 120% committed. And there were a couple of thoughts for me, well, 3 areas. Number one is I knew I was living on borrowed time with my mother, and I had had an international career, as you said, and I thought I really want to be spending more time in Canberra. I want to be present. I want to really enjoy those last 2 or 3 years because I genuinely believe in living life with no regrets. And that's my value around family and my commitment to my family. So I thought I needed a role that was going to provide the flexibility, and I wanted to talk about family first. The second reason was I'd started to tell our board there was so much I wanted to do. All of the things that when you've got all the demands of being a C-suite executive, I was sort of skating across the surface of areas that I knew could make an impact, and I wanted to go deep. Some of those areas, like how do you do CEO succession better? How do you build better pipelines? So you've got diverse pipelines, especially for women. So you have a selection of what an organisation might need when you come up with a CEO change. And the third thing is I'm just deeply curious. And when you've just been in one business all the time and you're understanding the complexity of the business environment and the global geopolitical environment, I thought, what about being a consultant and moving in and out of different businesses to understand the themes and patterns that have come up in my corporate career that I could then start to apply in a variety of different businesses. So social value came out. I set up 2 businesses. First of all was Self Energy, which was CEO succession, executive coaching, and the third area was culture advisory work. In the middle of sort of COVID, I was saying to someone, a trusted partner, Paul Kelly, I can't believe it. I just keep coaching all of these people who have been marginalised by our current corporate system. And, by bullying or harassment or, we're being put on the glass cliff, put in the difficult roles that no one else wanted to do or being overlooked. And I just said, there's a systemic change that we could do here, that we're not using our human capital and the diversity of our human capital effectively in service of creating value. And so why social value? We're all about driving the value through the execution of strategy. So enabling boards and organisations to set strategy, but we spend sort of usually about 90% on the why and what we're going to do. And we see organisations spend only 10% on how. How do you then, because you've pivoted your strategy, what's the org structure of change that you need to make, which is often in your transformation teams? What's the leadership that is required? What's the culture and the development and the new skills in service of that strategy? And how do we build a more inclusive, diverse world? So the social value is all about strategy execution, 8 different dimensions. We spent 3 years doing deep research on what makes sustainable businesses actually not only just survive, but thrive. And how do you deliver the results and do the right thing by people, which is the social or the S and ESG. Now, by working on the value side first, right, and that's what the value acceleration platform, we can show where are you missing on value, eroding value, and we've got that down to a percentage which you can use with your financial results, but also where are you also actually running well too many risks, like on skills, anything to do with skills gaps, burnout, harassment, bullying, those areas. And that's the AI model. That we've got a team of people that we've worked with to build this tool. And we talk to the executive team themselves, fill in the 50 questions. And therefore, they own the answers.
The answers.
And therefore, what we can do then is coach and develop the leaders in service of the initiatives they've already set to drive value, but also build inclusive cultures. So it's the end.
I want to go back to the comment you made about, it's hard work being a CEO, and I don't disagree with you. I own that title myself, and it is hard work because you've got so many stakeholders, not just your board, but the people who work in your organization and your external customers and other stakeholders. And at a point in time right now where it is the fastest pace of change, but when we look back on it, it'll be the slowest pace of change that we would have ever experienced, fastest but slowest, which is, sort of kind of strange when you look at it in that perspective. But it means that leaders are under significant pressure to deliver. What is the best piece of advice that you can give to CEO suites or, emerging leaders or leaders in this space where they're throwing 100 different things at the one time, they're under pressure to perform, they're under pressure to, make sure the P&L is profitable, create inclusive workplaces, diverse workplaces, have a psychologically safe workplace. You've got global events happening that we've got no control over. How do you get CEOs to manage their burnout, their energy, their mental health, their workload? How do you do that?
A powerful question that I always like asking CEOs is when you've got a plate that's exactly as I know as you've explained there, so full and complexity, and it's just getting harder right now. We've got obviously what's going on at the moment with tariffs, everything. And it's like, and you can actually get too bamboozled by all of that.
Yeah.
Is my objective. So I always say, what is the highest possible contribution that I can make in my role with my skills and my abilities and my energy for this business?
Great
and
question.
getting real clarity on that and writing down. So when I'm coaching CEOs, I'm asking, let's look at that. Let's understand that. What you find, and then you say is, okay, so that's it. And then you get exactly what you said. But I haven't got time to do half of that.
Mm.
Why? So sometimes it's as simple as looking at doing a diary. I love doing this. I did this with CEO yesterday, a diary audit.
Mm. Mm.
Let's look at how you're currently investing your time.
I'd hate you to have a look at my diary.
Yeah, be careful what practice what you preach is the
Yeah.
same to me.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to say one of my adages, if you want to ask that question, is Brené Brown? I'm not here to be right, I'm here to get it right.
Yeah.
So I think I'm getting it right with my diary too. So I don't want to be the person at the pulpit here and like
Yeah.
stand and so forth. But we do that, and then you sort of say, okay, who else can do all of these other things? And often what happens when we get more and more senior in roles, we forget that we've got to create the capacity for that next level role, right? And all of the demands, as you say, of that role, we have to let things go. So we have to stop doing things because they're part of our current role. And it's very hard because people like doing what they know how to do. So why would I let go of all that good stuff?
Yeah.
Because I know that's my comfort zone. Versus actually then if you flip to the other side, saying, well, you're not doing what your highest possible contribution is. You're suffering burnout or, you're exhausted. You're not delivering to the best of your abilities there. So looking at actually creating, first of all, it's creating that gap to do your job, letting go. And one of the things, especially if you're someone that cares deeply about people, as a result of the way in which your ways of working, how are you also impacting on the people underneath you? Your ability to do their jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you've led transformational change in many, many organizations. I'm interested to know what were some of the hardest lessons that you learned or the organization learned during those change periods?
Oh, lovely question. And still learning, I think, every time I enter into something like that. But I'm just going to go back. When I was first made Chief Transformation Officer and I had to understand what was that title. And it was high stakes, 200 million required within 18 months. Amatil had restated the business results twice, couldn't do it a third time for our CEO, who was new, female, Alison. I had to figure out what should I know that I don't know now. I can either stumble and try and figure it out, but I've got 18 months and it's high stakes. And I think this is important in transformation. Who's done this really, really well? And so the board had hired McKinsey. We had McKinsey in for a few weeks to help sort of structure the transformation officer, to your point. So structuring, ensuring that you had a dedicated office. And I then spoke to 6 that they introduced me to that were probably either 1 to 2 years ahead of the journey I was about to embark. And there was a consistency in which they gave me answers of which then I led. So I just want to really credit. I think this passing on of knowledge is so, so important. I want to really give credit to those 6. And I'm talking the head of Chief Transformation Officer from Frontera, Rio Tinto, BHP, ANZ, it was a mix of different industries. And here's what it came down to. And then my own learnings are in here, are really clear why you are doing what you're doing and what you need to deliver. Secondly is the ownership of the executive. Usually this Chief Transformation Officer sits alongside the executive team. You've got to be a very well-respected or quickly become a very well-respected peer because you're in and out of their business and they're not used to having you.
And they're not used to it. Yeah.
So you've actually got to work at those quality of your peer relationships and the partnership that you build with your peers and being in service of them. The third thing was where I brought my people and culture background. I knew who were the 15 high potential leaders for our business.
Within the organisation or outside of the organisation?
Within the Australian division that I was running. I was doing Australia. I knew the 15 that we were thinking could be sitting around the table where I sat. So I went to the executive team. I'm a member of the exec team. And I said, we're going to staff the transformation office with those 15 people. The coughing, the laughing, the spluttering, the expletives, the whatever, because they were all in big roles, P&L roles. They weren't exactly idle because they were our best. And I said, this is the best leadership development program.
Mm.
We can provide our people, and they're going to be sitting around this table. And so it's in our best interest that they are going to do what is right for this business, because they're going to own it within the next 3 to 4 years. So why wouldn't we get them involved? So the quality of the people that you put in that know all of the business areas, we had logistics, we had supply chain, marketing, sales, finance. We had all of the brightest of the brightest, and then you create a team.
Mm. It also creates a stickiness, right? It gives them a reason to stay. If it's a 4 or 5 year career path and I know that's where I'm going to end up, of course I'm going to put the investment into the business because you're investing into me. It doesn't make any sense not to do it.
Bingo.
Mm.
So that's exactly right. So they all came, we formed a team, we created a real community and a culture, and we also created ways of working where we were always going to work, that's the third point, in partnership with the people that were holding the existing roles. So I see transformation go off when it's like, it's all over here, we're in the transformation office, we're going to run this. You can never work in your own silo. So I think that partnership, communicate, and the consistency of communication, going back to why we're doing it, what we're doing it. And the final thing is we were celebrating the progress, the quick wins. We got everyone involved. We went out into all different parts of our organization. I had what I called is where are the areas of opportunity? And we'd stop listening to our business. So I would have thought, I'd say probably 80 to 90% of creating that 200 million in new revenue and cost out over 18 months was all ideas that were sitting latent in our business. So we just
weren't at the table to actually share them with you.
It took the words out of my mouth. And then that also in itself instilled this great culture of I can speak up, I can learn, I can be part of this. So we united everyone on this journey of creating the change. And, we didn't have to restate our business results, and we celebrated along the way. I'm a big believer in recognizing, rewarding, and going, wow, look how far we've come. Look, we were there, we're here. Now where are we going next?
Yeah. Part of this transformational change that business leaders talk about, and we throw this word around a lot, is my business needs to be agile. I need to have agility in my business and agility in my culture and agility in my practice and agility in my people. It's really an overused word, I think. But what does agility actually look like in business and culture?
Yeah, I agree with you about being overused. Every time I see it, I sort of get a bit of a shudder these days. To me, I break down agile. I think of agile as the ability to be adapting and changing when you need to adapt and change. And how do you do that? You've got to be listening, looking at a variety of different perspectives, and understanding, and deeply curious and understanding how, not just settling for where we are now, but, look outside. What's the external landscape? What are our competitors doing? What we're doing needs to change to meet the market, or hopefully jump the market. So that, I think of that, I don't ever use the word of agile. I just think of like, how do we be deeply curious, have a continuous improvement mindset, listen, and then have the courage to put a stake in the ground or move in the direction that's required to continue to obviously safeguard and deliver value for all stakeholders.
How does it work with leaders who are risk averse? Because part of the agility is the ability to take risks. And I find that a lot of organizations actually stop growing because their leaders are risk averse, or we spend way too much time filtering through all the pros and cons and why I should be doing something or shouldn't be doing something, so we make the right decision, as opposed to doing it, and if it goes wrong, you pivot and you go again.
One of the things in the consulting we do is always evaluate the quality of decision making. Because to your point, you spend so much time analysing it, the decisions are not being made, which slows down your business, and you're eroding value. You're creating sort of everyone to be sort of waiting on stuff. So you've got you can quickly get a business can become slow or almost the inertia, right? And we don't realise that this decision actually has so many flow-on effects. So for risk-averse people is actually, I do 3 things. Well, there's so many things we do, but if I just name a couple, the first thing is actually, what's the alternative if we don't do this, right? And that's often worse than taking the risk itself. The second thing is actually ensuring that you have listened, you've proed and conned it, you've got all of the information you need to think about risk as an opportunity, and you're going to mitigate it because mitigating it, that risk to deliver value. And the final thing I think is for risk averse people is sometimes you have to point out to them that this is what the role requires, right? Unless you're the risk officer, if you're running a big business and you have to be managing risk and looking at risk as opportunity and making decisions, which sometimes you don't have all the information, you've got to have the courage to take the risk and to take the jump.
Where do leaders have the biggest blind spot when it comes to culture? Because all of these things we've been talking about right now all dovetail into the culture of an organisation. Yes. Where do leaders have the biggest blind spot around this?
The biggest. One of the ones I see the most is everyone talks the importance of culture. So walk the talk, not talk.
There are words on a wall that we say, this is our culture or this is our values. I see that a lot.
Those values on the wall are, yes, I usually go hunting for where the values actually have been brought up and the leader is living them. You're so right. On the cultural thing, though, it's just amazing. So many of the issues that, we're all mitigating against or getting called in to help with is because leaders are just focused on what needs to be done, not how it's done and the way in which it's done. And I think, you think about that and the quality of the interactions, the way you are as a leader, you're living the values. Another one of my favorite statements from Brené Brown is kind, honest.
Kind is clear. Yeah.
Kind is clear. Unclear is unkind. So the leaders then that are, thinking that we'll have too nice a culture, I'll never give feedback to anyone. That doesn't deliver value, but you've got a nice culture, right? Or you're over here just looking at value, but you're actually burning your people. So that ability, I think, and this is where leadership is so important. You've got to be able to drive value, but you've got to unite it and bring your people with you, and creating the environment for high performance, which is really your culture. That's so super important. People pay lip service to that, I think, who don't really understand the interconnectedness of delivering sustainable results through human capital. And now, of course, we're throwing around AI, and AI is going to, fix everything. I actually think it's the adverse of that, driving your people harder and utilizing AI to get that competitive advantage.
We must not forget that AI doesn't sleep and has no empathy, and it can go 24/7, and we can't compete with it in the workplace, right? So now you've done a lot of work in the D&I space, and it's certainly a conversation that has come to the forefront again, not for all the right reasons, given what's happening in the US at the moment. But in the organisations that you've worked in, how have you seen D&I policies really come to life in the right way? Because it's more than just, I heard this the other day of someone saying, we're having a bring your cultural food day to the business so we can share it. And that's sort of our D&I, and it's like, no, it's not that. It's not that. Please stop bringing food. So how have you seen it really lived well in organisations?
Yeah, it's not a one day a year for that. Yeah. Same with International Women's Day or anything else. Yeah, you're so right. It's back to what we said about culture. If you want to do DEI well, you do it well 365 days a year. You're utilizing all of your available human capital. You're ensuring that your team reflects your customer or your client base, right? Because you want that diversity, your competitive advantage. And if we look at all of there's been so much research done about if you want to drop 4x, 6x, 8x your results, it's because you've got diversity of thought and wisdom around the table. So I see it still hugely important. I know the whole wokeism and what's the whole thing being wound back in the United States, which is, it's, I think, deeply upsetting to hear about. However, what we've done in social value is we still 150% believe in DEI. But when you get people playing a bit of a backlash, it becomes a bit political. And I don't play politics. I just never believe in politics. The outcome is we're about driving value, right? And we know, as we said, all the results, every survey says diverse, equitable, and inclusive cultures and teams drive better results. So what we do now is instead of calling it diversity and inclusion, we call it capability and contribution. And that's on our wheel and in our AI tool around value. And, we're not getting the backlash. It's exactly the same thing. We're still driving towards that outcome of creating value and doing the right thing by people. And then the second thing I would say on and anything to do with this, if it aligns with your purpose, your mission, your values, you don't listen to rhetoric, because we've seen things come and go all the time, but there's fundamental principles of what makes businesses successful over time, and stick with those.
You've often talked about the idea of a whole leader. What does that mean?
A whole leader to me is someone that is okay with who they are. That's the first statement. It's not this bring your whole self to work thing, because then we can bring the bad parts and blame away our, justify. Whole leadership is being able to actually, I think it's the 360 version of leadership. So first of all, I need to have deep self-leadership of myself. The only person that leads me is me. That accountability for yourself, your own development, and the impact that you're having on others. We start with that. That's for me, that's the whole. I'm bringing out the whole to the external environment. The second thing is where am I playing a whole ecosystem as a leader? So I've got a variety of different stakeholders. I'm going to report to someone. I've probably got peers. I've got direct reports. How am I best listening, learning, and interacting with the whole of the ecosystem in which I work to be a leader in that circumstances? And the final thing about this is, how do you bring your hue, which is this lovely thing of we've all got great personal traits, bringing that sort of, we talk about will and skill, but this energy and passion is a trait of some people. The ability to see round corners is something. The ability to be the black hatter and think of things that no one else will think about. They're all your unique attributes, and bringing those your unique attributes, your skills, your lived experiences, all to the fore to what you're actually trying to do in step 1 and 2 that we just talked about.
Where do you think Australia is when it comes to women in leadership?
We've made good progress. I believe in being positive.
There's a but coming, I think.
Yeah. And we've still got a long way to go. And
why do you think that is? Because we've been talking about this for a very long time. I mean, I'm not going to age myself, but I've been in business for a long time and have been involved in how do we bring equity and equality and diversity to the table from the lens of a female who is of an ethnic woman of colour perspective. And we've been talking about it for a long time, and it's just taking so long to move the dial. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, look, still think we've got these hierarchical corporate systems, and you've always got to look at who's at the top or in the roles of influence. We've got to continue to get more and more diverse people in those roles. How do we do that? I think that's the structural changes why social value, right? We get leaders to actually say, wow, if I'm not utilising all of my available human capital effectively, and I'm only using people like me, look at these results versus these results, which ones would I prefer? So that whole value equation. The other thing is, where are the issues? And systemically looking to address the issues. And each organisation that we're certainly in has their own unique challenges around that. One of the ones we just talked about, which I love doing, is moving, for example, diverse candidates out of functional roles, where we often find them, into P&L roles, and we act as their transition or their coaches, because we've done those roles ourselves in our business, to actually build them into successful division head roles to get better diverse pipelines for CEO succession. So as we get more and more people looking different at the top, I think that's a really important step. The second thing is, from the culture, as you brought it up, if we've got people that are actually actively working against inclusion and against, only hiring certain people and not delivering, which there's still a few of those around, we've got to actively coach and educate them into thinking about creating different teams to create that next frontier of value. And the third thing is, where in businesses, there's still where we still lose people at different points in their careers, right? Because of caring responsibilities at different stages. And so that's where you've still got this clash with the sort of the traditional role modeling of women. If I just use women, for example, women versus men in society. And one of the things I used to always say to the grads, when I used to talk to the grads at Coca-Cola or at Amcor or Credit Suisse, is say, what's a really good piece of life advice you'd go on? I'd go, marry well. And I'd say, what do I mean by marry well?
It's not about the money.
Have the conversations, exactly right. Have the conversations that are really important now for your career. Mm-hmm. The sharing of workloads at home. If you choose to have children, how are you sharing those responsibilities? What's the pinnacle you want to get to in your career? What's the pinnacle they want to get to? And make a pact. Mm. If you feel good that you're going to get that level of support, that's called marrying well. If you suddenly realize, and I walked away from one of the greatest loves of my life in my early 20s, absolutely madly in love, had been madly in love forever. Mm. And I walked away because as we got forward, I realized that I wasn't going to have a career. Yeah. That ultimately it was going to be about his career, and he was highly successful.
Mm. Brave decision to make for yourself.
Oh God, it killed me. Yeah. I mean, I'm a heart person. I was
you were broken.
I was absolutely broken, but you know what? We remained best friends, and he passed away 10 years ago, and I was devastated. He still was a great person in my life. We couldn't be married though, because we wouldn't have had the same. We were there were lots of other things that were great,
but not the marriage part.
Not the values.
Sorry, but the values part, yes. What's the one piece of advice you'd offer leaders who want to balance the purpose and performance in their business? And, we all want to leave a legacy, right? We all lead organizations because we want to leave a legacy behind. How would I balance that? What's your advice on that?
I like to call the power of the pause and where can I create the end?
Like that, power of the pause and where can I create the end?
Because when you're under pressure, sometimes you feel you're at this, like, I've got to quickly make a decision where it's one or the other.
Yeah.
If you just pause, is there a way in which I could get both? Because that's an ultimately great outcome, right?
Kate, thank you for your time. I actually could do another whole 45-minute podcast with you. I've got so many questions I'd like to ask you, but maybe we'll do a part 2 on this. But thank you for your time and sharing all your knowledge with us.
Thank you very much, Sadhna, and thank you to all your listeners. It was a real privilege and honour to have this conversation, so my gratitude.
If you like what you've heard, please share, rate and review this podcast, and don't forget to share it with anyone who might benefit from hearing it. The producer of Future Fit Leadership is Maritza Barone from Guide Your Light Network. If you would like to reach out to me, please DM me on any of my social media platforms. I'm available for speaking at conferences or consulting to your business. Future Fit is created in partnership with Future Leadership, a capability ecosystem for boards and executives. If you'd like to join the community and receive a free takeaway each week, sign up at the Future Exchange app in my show notes. Thank you for having me in your space.
This is a Guide Your Light Network production, creating podcasts with purpose.